Okay, I declare the Revenue Review Committee meeting open at 6 p.m. As the presiding member, I confirm that the City of Wanneroo Standing Orders Local Law 2021 will apply to the proceedings of this meeting. Good evening, councillors and staff. We wish to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land we are meeting on, the Whadjuk people. We would like to pay respect to the elders of the Noongar Nation, past, present and future, who have walked and cared for the land, and we acknowledge and respect their continuing culture and the contributions made to the life of this city and this region. Please note that the audiovisual proceedings of tonight's meeting will be live broadcast online. With the exception of matters discussed behind closed doors, the broadcast of the proceedings of the meeting can be accessed live and on demand through the City of Wanneroo YouTube channel. The attendances are as per the record. We have two apologies for tonight. Councillor Phil Bedworth and Councillor Helen Berry. I haven't received any other apologies. Moving to item 3.1, to confirm the minutes of the Revenue Review Committee meeting held on the 13th of April 2026. Do I have anyone to move that? Deputy Mayor Miles, and seconding, Councillor Wright. Thank you. Tonight, just to let people know, we will be using a show of hands. Just keep them up until I ask you to lower them, just so staff can get a correct count of the room. Can I have all of those voting in favour of the confirmation of minutes? I think that's pretty easy. That's passed unanimously. All right, just write that there. Okay, on to item 4, reports. Declarations of interest by committee members, including the nature and extent of the interest, are to be made at the commencement of the item to which the interest relates. Declaration of interest forms are to be completed and handed to the Chief Executive Officer. So, item 4.1, community safety and our compliance regime. I just want to say at the outset that there is a possible alternative to this one from Councillor Wright. Director, would you like to speak to this item?
Thank you, Chair. This is my first Revenue Review Committee. Very excited to be here. Items 4.1 and 4.2 are both presented as a culmination of discussions from the elected member group, and so they've been tabled to this committee at that request. Just framing the strategic approach to these reports, the Local Government Act provides us with the statutory authority to regulate and manage local government property. The city's parking local law and public places and local government property local law, as you well know, are both out for public comment at the moment. We anticipate that they'll be presented back to Council, all going accordingly, in October this year, and anticipate that Gazetta will be early 2027, which will be in time for setting the budget for 27-28, should that be an outcome of those two local laws. Administration of these local laws, including the determinations and decisions, is delegated through the CEO, through to myself, the Manager of Community Safety and Emergency Management, and also to the Coordinator of Safety, Mr. Lowenhoff, who is here tonight and has a wealth of experience in this space. If anyone would like to, he can talk for days about the philosophies behind parking, for example. Should the committee determine an alternative, for example, option 3 for full compliance, or potentially to move towards paid parking, we believe that both of the reports outline the cost implications, resourcing implications, unintended consequences, etc. So we believe that that should help guide your decision making. And if there are, or given that this is the Revenue Committee meeting, we do have some stats and figures all prepared should your line of questioning come in that way. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that summary. Councillors, I'd like to go to some questions if anyone would like to ask any questions. Councillor Seif.
Thank you. Thank you, Director. Thank you for the report. My impression that I have from this report is that we're currently not, so when we're issuing a warning in terms of, or an education, as the report refers to it, an education to somebody who's violating the rules, we're not documenting this anywhere at all. We don't have a log system.
Director?
Thank you for that question. Yes, we do log all of the education as well as the enforcement approaches that we take.
Further questions?
From what I understood from the report, it's verbal cautions first, which is taken as an education, but that it's not logged. So I've written here in the column, should be logged in a CRM, standard log entry, no personal opinions.
Director?
Thank you, Councillor. Through yourself, Chair. Can I just get that page number that you're referencing?
Yeah, sorry. I'm on page 2. Where is it? And yeah, and then sorry, and another question, if the chair will allow me, was whether or not the officers attending to these matters get conflict and de-escalation training.
Director?
Thank you. So for the two-part question, yeah, there are some situations where rangers would be out on the road, particularly we know that there's a hotspot, for example, school parking, and they might speak to, say, 20 people in that situation. That would come back to the city. We would record the activity and the resource that's been out and what's happened as a result of that. The CRM process that we follow provides a very stringent records management of all activity in the compliance regime as well. The staff do have conflict de-escalation training as well as part of their annual program.
Any further questions from other councillors? I'll go with Councillor Miles, Deputy Mayor.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Just my question, are we going to deal with 4.1 and then 4.2? Because the Director sort of spoke on both.
We will do 4.1 then 4.2.
So do you wish to have a mover and a seconder for that so we can...
For 4.1? Yes. Yeah, okay, we can do that now. Would anyone like to move this item? Mayor moves. And Deputy Mayor seconds. We will continue questions.
Can I just... we sort of said that we'd incorporate those other words from the other councillor. Did you have those to incorporate, or has administration already got those updated words to incorporate as item 3?
I'll just let the CEO speak to this.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Yes, the words are available. They're in the admin team's hands at the moment. So if you like, we can update that on the screen so you can see what that would look like.
I've read them previously. I'm quite happy with them, if the deputy's happy with them as well. I've just got a couple of questions.
Yes, ma'am.
Is that okay now? I find it quite interesting that we do a verbal warning, but it's not necessarily recorded. Then we do written cautions, and then we do infringements. You know, it would have been really good if we could have had a central database that if a registration number had a verbal warning, we would go straight to infringement, rather than we could give a humongous number of verbal warnings, but each ranger that comes and the same person doing the same thing just gets the same thing the whole time. I don't know if there's a process or an ICT program that can be used in this way, that we can record whether we've given the verbal warning first, and we would do it to the registration, I think, of the vehicle, and then if we notice them doing it again, they can get a written warning, and then the third time they've had 2 warnings that go straight to the fine. And that would give an escalation process, particularly when we're talking about parking around schools and things like that, because I think the way it's working at the moment, if there isn't an ICT program that all of the rangers can use, then no ranger knows what the ranger that did the previous day before if someone else is on roster at school site or anywhere like that. Do we have an ICT system available for the rangers to be able to use within their vehicles in an easy, simple way?
Sorry, Director.
Thank you for the question. Currently, we do require an uplift in our systems to manage in this space, the compliance regime. We have been looking into a lot of the different systems and have had several examples given to us, and we've road tested those. None of them have really been able to specifically target what the City of Wanneroo does require, knowing that 90% of our compliance regime is in that parking around schools. So that's where the issue is coming in, us actually uploading or on lifting a specific system, but we are still trying to progress with that. I can confirm that there currently is no budget listed for us to do that. And including that is the LPR, the licence plate recognition, or even in targeted areas where we think that might be effectively implemented. We don't have the budget, and we currently haven't planned to bring that online in the next 12 months because of those issues that we haven't been able to resolve.
Mayor, continue.
Yeah, it would be interesting because we cannot do anything. I would not want to do a motion on notice or anything outside of the budget cycle, but it would be interesting to know what it actually costs to have a system of that efficiency to be considered whether it would be viable one way or the other. It might not be cost effective to have, but it'd be nice to get a ballpark figure just to have that information so that I looked at the 3 points, like existing education first approach, but we seem to have a lot of parents still not obeying. The strength in education first approach I do actually prefer, but the third compliance first approach reminds me of Joondalup and Stirling, I'm afraid, and they're pretty harsh with their fining, and that I think, and that's why I'm happy to endorse option 2, a strengthened education approach as the city's default compliance position for the community safety matters with greater reliance on written cautions, but also endorse the periodic targeted non-discretionary enforcement operations for selected local law and regulatory offences. And I think of times when we get a lot of complaints around the schools, when there are particular schools and parents are not, it's really rough, I can understand, and we do the best we can with parking, but it's also not safe for children around the schools if the parents aren't parking in compliant fashions. So that's why I'm happy to move item 2, option 1. Option 2. It's point 1, option 2.
The recommendation.
Point 1, option 2. Okay.
Sorry, Mayor, can I confirm you were speaking to the item just then as
Yeah,
a
I
mover?
just spoke to the item.
Thank you.
Yeah, I did my question. I just spoke to the item rather than waste time. Thank you.
Just before I go to our seconder, are the mover and seconder happy with the third option as listed? Excellent, thank you. The amendment will be incorporated into the substantive. Deputy Mayor, would you like to speak to the item?
Yeah, just briefly, thank you, Chair. I do support option 2. I think we as a council have always preferred the education first approach. I do like the fact that we're going to strengthen up that component of the education. I do, because I definitely don't want rangers to be a revenue raiser for this council at all. That's why I do prefer it. The only And I think we all understand as a council that the real big issue around the schools is that 15 to 20 minutes of the mad rush, when you've got mums or dads needing to pick up children, drop them off, then get back to work and all of that. So that's why I prefer the education approach, or the educational approach. My only question, so that's my support. The only question I would like to be answered is, at the presently, I think we just have a crew driving around. There's no physical presence to say the parking inspectors around. When we do the educational approach, I guess my question is, how are we going to do that? Because I know we've got a number of schools within the area that I go to. There's at least 4 that end up, because of the planning process, have made it very hard for parents to get in and out and so forth. So how are we going to manage that component under an education without maybe having a walk-along police officer with us to say you can't park in the road, especially blocking off traffic? It doesn't just happen outside this building, Director. It happens around the 3 schools that were stupidly put together up in Mindarie. It happens at the Catholic school in Clarkson itself, and it does happen slightly down at one of the private schools in Butler. So I'm just interested how we can make that process better for the rest of the community to deal with in that mad half hour.
Director Davies.
Oh, thank you for the question. Yes, we do have 2 parking patrol officers who will be continuing with this approach, and they are scheduled on at those particular hours. And outside of those hours, currently with the lack of systems, they come back into the office, file everything, and then they go out for the afternoon run. All 24 rangers are also tasked with those education initiatives as well, noting, and I believe it's in the report, that if a higher priority of a greater risk comes up, then they would need to prioritise that over, say, a school parking issue. The administration's positioning around putting this option forward for you is that we believe that we can stylise within our current resources to manage within the new timeframes the 2-week reduction. So it's not necessarily a change to how we would be doing things. It's just reducing that, instead of going verbal and then eventually a written, it would move straight into that warning and that compliance. The second part of your question was around the due and orderly planning, and I know that prior to my time, advocacy from the city through to the Department of Education has resulted in them ceasing K-12 in their planning, and in more recent times we did, under the former administration and the agency, we were having conversations with them about increasing their parking on site by 50% in the planning stages. Since then, the machinery of government and a few changes, so those conversations could probably be reignited to try and assist with any future developments in that space.
Thank you, Director. I'm just going to go to Councillor Smith and Councillor Wright.
Thank you, Chair. Just got a few questions. The first one's just for clarification. So I think one of Councillor Smith's first questions was the impression that the verbal warnings weren't recorded, but I thought your answer indicated that they were recorded. But on page 3, the second last bullet point, it says repeated reliance on verbal education can lead to the same person being educated multiple times by different officers, reducing consistency and weakening the perceived consequences of non-compliance. So in those cases, if they are being recorded, is the system not being checked? Because we also had another question about CRM management, and that we don't currently have the resources. So I'm quite confused about, do we record, do we not record, or if we record, it's not checked when the rangers are doing their checks?
Director?
Yeah, thank you. And I'm still unable, I guess repeated education doesn't mean that it's not being recorded.
Councillor Smith, do you have anything further on that?
I guess if we can get follow-up clarification after, yeah, because I'm still not clear on that. But I'm supportive of, and this will come to a question, of moving towards the first one being written warnings. As the report says, I think most people are aware of what the rules are anyway. So my second question is, with the reduction in the period of 9 weeks or the first term to 2 weeks, if you have somebody who's already received one written warning, in that time, or a verbal warning in the 2 week time, and they're a repeat offender in the 2 weeks, you've got, 10 pickups and 10 drop-offs in that time, would it escalate if they're a repeat offender within the 2 weeks or not? Thanks.
Director?
Thank you for those questions, both very detailed. So I'll get started and then Mr Lowenhoff will carry on. So I did seek some clarification. All ranger activity is recorded. We have a very clear understanding of where our rangers are going, who they're speaking with, and what as a result of that information. However, for verbal and education processes, it's not recorded as a log for the purpose of compliance, so that we can then issue a written notice and start that process underway. So I think that's probably making more sense to us because of that back of house administration that we do apply in that space. We do that because we need to know roughly how much time our staff are spending out on the road, in which areas and where those hotspots are, and then we marry that up against CRM data to make sure that our targeted approaches are on point. But through yourself, Chair, I might throw to Mr Lowenhoff and see if he would like to add any further clarity to that.
Thank you very much for the question, through the Chair. So our customer request management system allows officers to input notes from their activities, and so they will make a note or a mention of any verbal warnings that are given there, but that doesn't act as a database to be able to draw from for further compliance activity. It's a record of the activity undertaken during that particular job or patrol. The written warnings and the infringements are part of a database, so once a written caution is issued on the database, it will remain in the system, and any future entries for that vehicle's registration, so to speak, will flag that that vehicle has had a written caution in the past, and then the officer can then escalate to an infringement.
I believe there was a second question in there that needed an answer, unless I'm not following correctly.
Thank you very much. Through the Chair, yes, so in those instances where a caution or a written caution has been flagged as being received an infringement, a written warning in the past, then the officer will then actually escalate to an infringement.
Councillor Smith?
Thank you. One more question. And now it's just gone. Maybe if you come back to me. Sorry, thank you.
No worries. I'll go to Councillor Wright and then to Councillor Seif.
Thank you, Chair. I'm in disagreement with some of my fellow committee members around the option, but I'll keep that for later. Just in regards to, I suppose, questions around resourcing for me, and I know you did mention around statistics and that sort of thing in your opening remarks, and you mentioned 24 rangers in one of your responses to one of the other committee members, noting on page 4 that there was a 47% growth in customer requests for community safety items. Could you give us some idea around some of the response times that residents are taking in regards to lodging a complaint, either through the after-hours service or the throughout business hours, around how long it takes for rangers to actually become on site? because that's probably where I'm getting a lot of pain points, and residents end up going to councillors, and then councillors are having to speak to the manager or put in a CRM, and it clogs up our system as opposed to it being handled administratively. So I'm interested to know around response times and whether there's a conversation that's needed to be had with council members around service levels and determining timeframes of when responses should be set, and obviously council should then adopt the resourcing for that.
Director?
Thank you for the question. I'll get started with the high-level policy line, and that is that we've got a 7-day turnaround under our customer charter, noting that each individual case is going to be quite unique. Receive the CRM or receive the information, do the investigation, go on site for a site inspection, bring that back, and then make the assessment and then close it out. But I'd like to also throw to Mr. Lowenhoff, through yourself, Chair, as on the ground and close to it, might be able to provide a bit more insight. Thanks.
Thank you, Director. Through the Chair. Officer response times to attend to a particular incident or request is very contingent on a number of factors. So that will be the nature of the request and how it's prioritised by the officer. Secondly, it will depend on the distance the officer is from the particular incident, and thirdly, it will also depend on the number of staff we have on at any particular time. So we do have 24 rangers, but they're split across a number of shifts, so which means we have 12 rangers on at any given day, and then depending on any leave entitlements or other leaving or sick leave or whatever may be, that may reduce. And we also have training requirements and whatnot, so it's not 100%. It's not often where we have a full contingent of staff because of those varying factors, and so to be able to then attend a particular job at a particular time will depend on those that have been stated.
Thank you. Councillor Wright.
Thanks, Chair. I suppose one of the frustrating things for me is around council supporting FTE increases, which we did for Rangers services in the last budget. And I think from my knowledge, it was probably around 5 or 6, if I can remember correctly. And then obviously not having full capacity be able to operate at that level due to whatever circumstances. I don't know what it was like before, but clearly a lot less than what we have now. Probably my comments are more related to around the parking side of things. So majority of the other queries I don't get many comments from residents on. It's probably around illegal parking, parking on a footpath, obstructing a road, those types of queries where I find, I would say some of them are time sensitive, where sort of the road's being blocked off, you call rangers and they're not here until 6 o'clock later in the day when the person's had time to block the road, move their car, go to the shop, come back, and still nothing's being done. So I'm just wanting to understand the response times around the parking, in my terms, they're violations, and that's where I'd like to see that more strengthened. So I'm just interested in around response times for parking, whether it be on a footpath, whether it be on a road, and those scenarios, whether you have any more information on that side.
Director?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the question. Yes, you are correct. There was an uplift of 5 FTE, and we're very thankful for that. It did equate to 4 FTE in full-time rangers because we actually handed back just over one FTE worth of the Coastal Ranger program. That uplift in Ranger services actually put us on probably a par for an uplift that hadn't occurred for nearly 15 years in that. And I think what we've tried to put into these reports is that a staged approach in the compliance regime is preferred because our current resource is built for today. It's not built for tomorrow's growth or the complexity of things that are coming. And then through yourself, Chair, over to Mr. Lowenhoff, who might be able to talk a little bit more about those response times. Particularly, we have had that conversation around photographic evidence also helping out, and that will come back through the local law as well. But did you want to provide a response as well through the Chair?
Thank you, Director. Thank you for your question. In regards to those response times, the systems we have don't have the capacity to capture response times from the time the job comes to the time the officer actually attends. It's very difficult to be able to establish that, and there wouldn't be any consistent time frame because it is dependent on those factors. So the distance the officer is, the priorities of the other work that's in at the moment, and the capacity of the officer to attend at that given time. So it's mostly priority based. And an example might be if there is a dog attack or a wandering dog of those natures, and the community safety is the first priority of the officer, so they'll attend to those higher priority jobs in all cases.
Councillor Wright.
Thank you. I'll just make some general remarks and you can take it as a speech for the item if you would like.
Against?
No, for.
For?
Supporting.
Go for it.
I suppose just for me, I'd like to make sure that we are capturing data, and ideally there's an opportunity that within our new CRM system to make sure that we are able to capture response times. And I think it can be quite hard for councillors to make an informed decision when we don't have the data to inform it. And that's something that I struggle with when we do get proposals from administration, that there is, I wouldn't say a lack of data, but there's not that clear data that really paints a picture around what's happening on the ground level. And I think for us that can be quite hard when we are having to put service unit against service unit for increases at a budget level, considering that we are facing pressure from community around rate increases and those types of things. So I think moving forward, ideally if there is an opportunity that we can better capture data, and also I suppose another frustrating thing for me is around particularly, and I'll use the example within my own ward, Riderwear Gym, and there's obviously been a lot of issues with illegal parking there, and I'll continue to raise this until my term finishes. To be able to get rangers to focus on that area involves 7 meetings with administration, a number of emails to the manager, and a trip with the rangers to make sure that that issue was on the radar, considering that the city had approved a planning application under delegated authority, which is not necessarily Rangers' fault. But when it became a Rangers' issue, it involved a councillor having to continue despite the number of requests coming from residents in that area. And I suppose something for me is I don't want to be involved in administration, and I don't want to be able to have to keep pestering administration for rangers to be able to attend to a site. So for me, ideally, I don't know whether it needs to be an internal review or channel, but if there are a high concentration of complaints coming from residents, that should flag in a system or flag with the customer service centre to go, hey, look, we're having a problem here. Maybe this needs to be driven by administration or be escalated to a manager. Because if it comes to a councillor, it then gets very messy, and then all of a sudden you've got official channels going and you've got everything happening, which ends up probably slowing the response time down. So I'm just, for me, just flagging that is a concern, and it has been a nightmare in the central ward anyway, because we do have hotspots that come up from time to time, and even the showgrounds being an issue with events when we do large-scale events as well. So I just want that to be on the administration's radar, whether there can be some internal improvements made there. But overall, look, if the committee seems to be aligned with option 2, then I'm happy to support that. However, obviously upon review, you know, depending how our results go in our targeted campaigns, then hopefully that succeeds. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wright. Councillor Seif.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Smith, for your question earlier and that clarification, because I did ask almost the same question that the Mayor asked but got a completely different answer. So just to clarify, we give a verbal warning, and on page 2, under detail, the first bullet point, verbal cautions are suitable for low-level first contact matters, but they create no formal record and may be perceived as having limited consequence. So just that's where we are. I agree with Councillor Wright and with the Mayor's comments. We do need something to record these things in the interest of fairness. In the interest of fairness and everyone being treated the same, we do need something to record, but I agree with education first always. My question is, though, Chair, with point 3 being added, it's just, so the recommendation has now got a point 3 added, which I know that there were 2 alternatives emailed or amendments emailed today, and I saw them, but does the mover of point 3 want to speak to that? Because I might have some questions, because it's looking a little bit different than what I saw.
There is no mover or seconder of the amendment. They've been incorporated directly into the substantive. You can ask questions of administration about this one, but there is no particular councillor who can speak to the amendment.
So this is admin's addition, last minute addition. So where did this point 3 come from?
I'll just go to the CEO to clarify.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the question, Councillor Seif. So no, this is not an admin change. This was an amendment that had been emailed back and forth with committee members today, I believe. And what's happened is that when the Mayor and the Deputy Mayor has moved the officer recommendation, they've decided to also incorporate a point 3 into that. So it's not being debated separately, it's now part of the recommendation that's being considered before you. If you would like to ask questions about the implications of point 3 or whatever the case may be, we'll do our best to answer those questions. Does that help?
Yep, that's fine. I did see Councillor Wright's 2 attached PDFs today, but I didn't see this one. Sorry?
Sorry, Chair. My alternative's been withdrawn.
Yeah.
Based on Councillor Bedworth's suggestion.
You've got the 1, not the 2. Yep. No, I got that. It's just this one. So in regards to point 3 then, my question is, how are we going to, number 1, manage the frequency of these short-term targeted non-discretionary enforcement operations? And how are we going to make sure that we're not continuously revisiting the same spot over and over again and not being, it's back to fairness again with me, and not being fair. So there's nothing in here that speaks to anything like that, so I'm quite uncomfortable with it as it is.
Director?
Thank you for the question. Point 3 actually talks to a very standard operational practice that currently occurs. We do rely heavily on the CRM data, particularly when council members do make your CRMs, and we are continually writing back saying, please continue to log this through the ranges, through the CRM, and we ask that you provide that information through to community, because currently that is our strongest line of defence. And from that, that's how we do our targeted, and in this point it's called periodic short-term targeted non-discretionary enforcement operations, but that is exactly what we would encourage as doing. An example of that is when a new gym pops up and there's a flurry of activity, and we might not be as aware of its opening because we're off doing schools. We hear about it, and then a hotspot pops up, and we then target some resources out to that spot. A little harder to target has been some of the repeat offenders on the verge treatment style parking that we've talked about. That has and continues to be a bit of a challenge, but we don't see, administration would support that point 3.
Councillor Seif?
So how can council then be assured that we're not just continuously revisiting the easy pickings?
Director?
I'm not entirely sure I understand the question. If CRM data is coming through and or I suppose alternative mechanisms are when rangers are on the road and they are identifying behaviour that's outside of the local law, then it is being addressed. Apologies, I'm not sure I've addressed the question.
Councillor Sleep, did you want to clarify?
Yeah, I'll how many, is there ever a report on the periodic short-term targeted non-discretionary enforcement operations? Is there ever a report on that given to council? How many of these do we do a year? Which geographical spots are they in? Are we always revisiting the same spaces or
Director?
Thank you for indulging me. I do appreciate that. So yes, the type of reporting that we do in this space is through the annual report and the quarterly reporting, which is predominantly around, if it's quarterly reporting, it's through that CRM data, and the annual report does lend itself a little bit more to the anecdotal information that's around it. But based on that, there are some areas for improvement if council would like some greater transparency around the types of that targeted approaches that we're taking. I would suggest that in the interim, particularly as we go through this change management process and also with the local laws, that we could provide that through quarterly briefing notes for the time being, if that would be suitable.
Or the wrap, if I might just add a comment, would also be helpful. Councillor Seif?
Yeah, the wrap might be fine, actually. That will do.
Councillor Smith?
Thank you. So my third question, which is, there was a question about, we've established that the written cautions are on the database. The verbal ones, while being logged in ranger activity, are not on that CRM system. And so there was discussion about getting some costs about what it would take to be able to, I guess, officially put that as a part of the CRM. My question is, with this report and with these recommendations, it seems that we're moving towards going to written warnings at the first part. So even if we get the information about that, is it administration's, I guess, point of view that it would be worth going to that if we're moving away from just verbal warnings?
Director?
Thank you for the question. We do believe that the option that we've put forward for you is the best for this point in time. It's also about having some controls in place to manage behavioural change with the community and having what could potentially be a staggered or a staged approach as the population grows and that complexity becomes more diverse. Then, yeah, we believe that this is the best approach for that behaviour change, that we can manage that.
Thank you for that. I'm just going to call for any speakers against. No further questions? Okay, I think we'll move to the vote. We don't need a right to reply given that no one has spoken against. Councillors, if you approve of the recommendation as amended in the substantive, can you, well, it wasn't an amendment, but as it is in the substantive, please raise your hand. Thank you. That is passed unanimously. Moving on to item 4.2, analysis of possible introduction of paid parking. I'll get a mover and a seconder for this one, please. Councillor Smith moving, and a seconder. Deputy Mayor Miles. Okay, the recommendation, I'll move to questions briefly. Does anyone have any questions? Sorry. I'll have a speaker for it. Councillor Smith is the mover. Would you like to speak for the item?
Just to say that I'm happy with the report and satisfied with the approach to revisit in the future if we have any areas that do become hotspots and parking supersedes demand. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. Deputy Mayor Miles.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I do have some questions at the after, but I'm happy to support the recommendation. I think one of our biggest challenge, Council, is that we don't actually have any defined local town centres like a Joondalup at this stage. Whilst we have an Ocean Keys, which has one road, most of the parking is already done in private property. It's not done on council property. And I think even like here in the town centre here for Wanneroo, it is only the roads that we would be maybe putting some sort of paid parking. I do agree paid parking would be vital in locations where you might have a multi-storey, or maybe at the Alkamos swimming pool, where that is right next to a train station, and we may have to put something in place to stop people parking there all day for free, as opposed to parking in the Trans-Perth parking area and paying for it. I agree. I think it's something that we should always look at going forward. But after reading the report and understanding some of the costs involved in installing meters and systems like that, I think we need to wait for the next generation of possible number plate recognition cameras that can identify when somebody's been in a spot too long. I do have a question to administration to finish off, if that's okay, Chair. It's on, and I will refer to page 10. One of the questions is under the first of your charts, and it talks about the possible legal costs and that if somebody wishes to take it to court or challenge it or anything like that. I guess my question is the city doing their infringements different to other authorities? Because I'm pretty sure the City of Perth, if you stay too long, you get an infringement. If you don't pay it, it seems to go off to fines enforcement, and it's dealt with in that way. It doesn't go to a magistrate. So I'm just wondering why we are still using this system, or they're just doing something totally different that we're not aware of.
Director.
Thank you for the question. I am aware that we do need a new system uplift to streamline our process. As far as what other local governments are doing in that space, through yourself, Chair, I'll throw that question to Mr. Lowenhoff.
Well, thank you, Director. Thank you for the question, Councillor. In respect to unpaid infringements, people can elect to have either the matter go to court, so that is an available option, or they do go to FER. So in most cases that I've come across so far, people are electing to go to court, which means then the city have to attend court, and we pay our legal fees to our external counsel for those services.
Okay, so that's pretty standard then, from what we understand across all councils, local governments and that if somebody doesn't just pay it, it has to go to court, or can it go to fines enforcement?
Again, thank you for the question. So there's two options. A vehicle owner can elect to go to court immediately. If they don't pay the modified penalty, the city will then refer that to fines enforcement, who will then pursue that. And at some point on non-payment, if the vehicle owner is identified, then they will prosecute from their end. But people always have the right to elect to go to court.
That's it. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Do I have any speakers against this item? Councillor Wright.
Thank you, Chair. Look, I am going to speak against, because I don't think I'm going to be able to frame my questions in a way that would pass the test, so I'd rather just speak against. For me, not so much recommendation 1 around not supporting introduction of paid parking, and I thank administration for their report. I did have trouble I guess reading the report, I found it to be quite biased, and I actually printed this report out and gave it to 3 of my friends who are not from council, and I said, read this and tell me within the first page what you think the view of this paper is, and they were immediately able to point out to me that the report favoured not even looking into paid parking. And also a former elected member contacted me and also said the same thing. So I'm actually quite curious in terms of the level of information that provides an unbiased view around both options. There was no modelling around particular locations this could be introduced. I found it quite challenging that there was not even any timeframes of review. even factoring that into the growth of the city, and at some point looking at areas like Wanneroo Town Centre, like Clarkson, like Yanchep, and I found it to be heavily preferential. The other thing I wanted to highlight in the report is the stark difference between 4.3 and 4.2. So 4.3, which is obviously not related to community in place, strategic land policy, within that report, embedded throughout the whole entire thing, and I think I received an email from Community in Place this afternoon in regards to a possible alternate, and both of them related to one point in our council plan, and that was around revenue diversification, and that was one of our pillars within the council plan. Not one single time in this report it mentions the council plan or revenue diversification. So I read this, it has a predetermined outcome. I read other reports and they say, here's your options, take a pick, but these are the risks and benefits of both. So I found that quite concerning, particularly as someone like myself, not supportive of paid parking across the whole entire city, but targeted strategic areas. And particularly for myself, I've always supported the Wanneroo Town Centre being one of those sites, particularly looking at when we do multi-storey car parking, as the Deputy Mayor mentioned just before. The reason why point 2 is a concern for me is the enforcement and monitoring of that particular recommendation. So if you introduce paid parking, let's say it's $2 an hour, whatever it is, right? Or it's free for the first hour and then after that you've got to pay. If someone breaches that, it is a cost recovery mechanism to cover that cost of having that ranger go out. Now, not exactly, but you're still getting something for nothing. At the moment, it's continuing to, I guess, rangers or our parking officers to go out. It's almost like increasing the amount of operating costs because they've got to go out, check another thing, and you're not actually getting any revenue to cover that cost. So I have an issue with doing that because you're now increasing you're adding another operating expense because you're introducing the requirement of timed parking, rather than at the moment you don't have timed parking. So if you're going to do timed parking, it needs to be on a cost basis so you can at least recover some of it back. So that's my premise that I'm probably not happy about, is if you do want to do timed parking, then it needs to at least have some sort of cost recovery basis to it, obviously to keep it sustainable moving forward, because you end up just increasing operating costs by introducing timed parking. And even within the recommendation, there's no suggestions on where these timed areas are going to be. So I found the report to be quite lacking on both sides and providing it great. It provided the costs of setting up the equipment, which is fine, but what does that offset long term? You look at models like, and I think the Mayor mentioned it before, yes, Stirling and Joondalup, but you look, yes, they have issues around rates and increasing rates, but substantial amount of income are based on both of those councils earning parking rates. City of Perth is probably a bit different because of the nature that they're in, but you look at councils like City of Vincent, Town of Victoria Park, substantially their income within their budgets are made up of parking fees, and that allows them to do the nice to have things, which we unfortunately have the challenge of deciding whether we want to do those nice to have things or not. So as much as some of my colleagues around the table might not like it as a revenue raising, for me, yes, I see it as a revenue raiser, but it's going towards services that community wants, that necessarily we shouldn't be exactly funding from ratepayers equally. And I've always been a supporter of people user pays. So if you're a user and you use something, you should pay for it. And I've always been opposed to dividing that equally up, because people within my ward, for example, people that live in the rural areas might not ever touch any of these services and might just use the bare basics. So I've always been supportive of user pays, and paid parking is one of those. If you use the town centre, you pay for the town centre. That money then should be reinvested back into the town centre. So I've always been supportive of those types of measures because it then increases the upkeep of our local areas. So I just want to express my disappointment in the report as such. However, I understand that obviously this is quite a big report and it could obviously go on for pages and pages. So I understand the admin have tried to keep it within a digestible amount of information, but I just found it to be a little bit biased, and also to sense check with friends and former council members, and they said the same thing without reading the whole report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Wright. Do I have anyone to speak for the motion? Any further questions? Councillor Smith, would you like the right to reply? No? Okay, we will move to the vote. The recommendation is that the Revenue Review Committee does not support the introduction of paid parking across the city, and 2, supports the broader introduction of timed parking in areas where high parking occupancy is prevalent. Can I have a show of hands for the item? That's 5 for, and against the item? That is 1 against. Councillor Wright being that against. Admin got all that? Lovely. And we will move to item 4.3, the Strategic Land Policy Implementation Progress. I'll just allow our directors to swap out. Just noting that we have a confidential attachment to this one. If anyone wants to discuss that one, we'll just have to go behind closed doors. So just flag that if you're asking a question related to the confidential attachment. All right, who would like to move this item? Councillor Wright, and seconded Mayor Aitken. Councillor Wright, would you like to speak to the item, please?
No, thank you, Chair.
Mayor Aitken.
I think we've started on the right path. Thank you.
Awesome, thank you for that. Would anyone like to ask any questions about this item? Councillor Seif.
Thank you, Chair. Just one question. So I'm on page 23, and maybe it's a general question, doesn't have to be specific to page 23, but this is the Revenue Review Committee, so this is about revenue. If administration could please help me understand that the acquisition of land where the vegetation in the property seems to be of a similar quality to the offset area, how is that supporting revenue when we're buying basically environmental offset land?
Director Wollaston?
Not opposed to environmental offset land, very supportive of the environment, but I just can't see how that relates to revenue.
Sure, and through you, presiding member, so we're just checking out the inquiry and the property that you're referring to. So I think it's 777 Tea Tree Road, Bindoon. So I'll just confer with the officers as to who might have some background on that one.
Just a clarification, Chair.
Yes.
We are talking about possible land purchases. Would the CEO not suggest that this should have been done behind closed doors?
CEO?
Thank you for the question, Deputy Mayor. There's obviously been a decision at some point to put some of the attachments behind closed doors, so I can only assume that the officers have run an assessment and decided that it's appropriate. I don't have any further information to that, I'm sorry.
Director.
Sorry, through you, presiding member, I'll get one of our officers to answer. So Steve, you will provide an answer.
Oh, good. So thanks very much. Good evening. In response to your query, the nature goes back to the fact that the city has very little, according to our assets environmental team, land banked offsets. So in order for the city to progress with its current land holdings that it may have, it's seeking to develop, and or even future acquisitions which will require clearing activities, it will need environmental offsets or land with suitable environmental attributes which can be used as offsets. So we've identified an opportunity for a property which has significant, which we understand through preliminary investigations to have significant environmental attributes, and so therefore that this would provide a good opportunity to have land banked environmental offsets to allow clearing of the city's existing and future acquisitions.
Thank you for that. I'm just going to go to Mayor Aitken and to Councillor Seif.
Procedural motion, this actually should be through the confidential behind closed doors because the property hasn't been purchased yet and we're discussing the property.
Okay. We will close the meeting, adjourn the meeting for a short time to have a quick chat, and then we'll come back. About 5 minutes, thank you. Oh, seconding the procedural motion? Okay, we'll do the procedural first, because mine was second anyway. Okay, we'll go to a vote for that. That's passed unanimously. We'll be going behind closed doors. Can I have a show of hands for? Okay, and we are back. Do I have any questions on the agenda, excluding the confidential attachments? No? Okay, I believe this was moved by Councillor Wright. I assume you don't require the right of reply. We will move to the vote. Can I have all those in favour with their hands up, please? And that is passed unanimously. Thank you to all those tuning in from home for bearing with us there. We are moving to 4.4, the status update on the Revenue Review Committee, flagging that there is an alternative that has been proposed by Councillor Wright. But first, I will go for a mover for the current report that we have. Anyone wish to move the report as it is? Anyone wish to... No, I was about to ask for a second. We don't have a mover. Yeah, the motion has lapsed. We will be going to the alternative. I will very briefly read it out. That the Revenue Review Committee endorses administration preparing a report to Council to recommend disbanding the Revenue Review Committee and removes points 2, 3 and 4. Councillor Wright, do you have a seconder for this alternative?
Yes, Mayor Aiken.
Mayor, thank you. Councillor Wright, would you like to speak to your alternative, please?
Look, I'll keep it really short and not explain the reasons that have been provided on the sheet, but as we saw with the last item, particularly when talking about revenue review, I think it's quite important that councillors have a good environment to be able to articulate their thoughts without it being in the public domain in the first instance, and then obviously testing that with the wider group of councillors in a public format, so at least things are worked out properly and there's data informing that discussions. I just think now with obviously the legislation changes, certain groups have its time and place, and I think now that this is probably not the right format because these are straight out of admin offices straight into a public realm, and I think things need to be fleshed out a lot more before some of these items come to that public place. So I just want to make sure that we're creating an environment where we can have a collaborative and robust conversation around revenue review, but also some of our other groups as well. Obviously with the legislation changes, that impacts the way that we do that, but there are obviously better mechanisms that we can go through looking forward at the next 6 to 12 months. So I'll keep my comments there, but essentially as admin have put, we won't be losing out on information. It will just be going through to a concept forum or through a briefing note. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you for that, Councillor Wright. Mayor, do you have any further thoughts?
I don't think so. I just think it's a fantastic idea. Thank you.
Do I have any speakers against? No questions? It's pretty straightforward. You're trying to take this away from me. The first one I'm chairing. Okay, in that case, we will move to the vote on this one. I don't think we need anything further. Can I have everyone in favour of disbanding the Revenue Review Committee as recommended in the alternative? Raise your hand. Anyone against? Nah. Okay, it's all unanimous on that one as well. Okay. We move to item 5, confidential. We have nil. Item 6, late reports. We have nil. The date of the next meeting, the next Revenue Review Committee meeting is to be confirmed. It has to go to Council first for a final decision. Item 8, closure. Thank you everyone for coming along. There being no further business, I now declare the Revenue Review Committee meeting closed at 7:16 p.m.